Greetings, gamers! Welcome to part number 68 of my Let's Play Fire Emblem 10 Radiant Dawn. It's actually kind of absurd to me to think of a playthrough of mine getting above 60 episodes. I think it's pretty cool. One thing I will say, though, is that I don't think this is going to be anywhere near first place. I think first place is going to go very clearly to, you know what, I know what I'm gonna do. I kind of want to turn animations off for everybody but Ike. I think it'll be fine. Yeah, so I think that Genealogy, which is a Let's Play coming to a screen near you sometime soon. I'm not going to say exactly when because that's not immediately in the plans. But Genealogy, in just one generation, is probably going to take more time than this entire Let's Play. Which is kind of absurd, but also awesome. Genealogy is a very interesting game. It is probably the most replayable game out of the Fire Emblem games that I will touch. And yet most people say it's like the least playable because of how quote-unquote slow and clunky and old everything is. And I don't necessarily agree that that game is that bad. I think there are some issues with Genealogy concerning gameplay. A lot of that can be alleviated by turning off animations and using the in-game save state mechanic. Yes, that exists in that game, which is pretty awesome because a lot of people will eschew the idea of like save states and this, that, and the other. I actually think that save states have made a lot of old school gaming not necessarily more accessible, but more enjoyable. And not even just save states, because I don't particularly use that myself, in the sense that, like, to abuse when I do use emulators. But fast forward and rewind functions and stuff like that. And a lot of folks will say that that's casual gaming, and great, yeah, that's wonderful. Gaming is a hobby, and it can be played casually. Isn't that something crazy new to discover? So the fact of the matter is that, like, Genealogy has that inbuilt, so you can do stuff to allow for a better gaming experience, which I thoroughly appreciate, as the game itself is not all that conducive to necessarily a quick playthrough. You're not getting through that game in a speedrun setting in any kind of significantly fast time, especially if you're doing like castle stuff. You can avoid all of the castle things in Genealogy, but it's not necessarily advised that you do that, especially for how hard that the end game of Genealogy is. Not particularly in Gen 1. Gen 1 is super easy. You can solo Gen 1 with pretty much any character. Gen 2 is not the case. There is no quote-unquote soloing Gen 2. It's just not happening. Maybe parts of it, but you're definitely not soloing Gen 2. And that's even being said with some of the absolute busted units you receive. But the fact that it's so replayable is because not only do you get to pick the pairings of the parents to the children of the second generation, you get to pick what children basically come from those pairings. You also get to somewhat determine stats and money that they receive, but you absolutely get to determine the inventories of said units, which is pretty darn awesome, and how powerful they are and what skills they have, to a certain degree, obviously, because you cannot create units with pairings that do not exist, right? There's only a set number of pairings, but there's also the fact that you can just not pair units too, and have substitute units. And it's kind of insane. And the reason why I'm talking about all of this isn't just because I'm considering a Let's Play of Genealogy in the near future. It's also because, as of late, because I do play on emulation handhelds a lot. In fact, my favorite game console of all time at this current moment is the Mii U Mini Plus. Now, I would say that the Funky S is actually my favorite in theory. My vision is so bad that even though I know those games, the games that I play by heart and can play them on a screen that small, I would be lying to you if I said that I did it to any sort of degree. I need basically a magnifying glass on top of my bifocals on my extremely strong prescription glasses before I can even read anything on that screen, even zoomed in. That's how tiny it is. It's basically like a thumb-sized game system. Well, it's a little bit bigger than that. It's a palm size. Fits in the palm neatly and evenly. It was funny because the Black Knight actually criticaled Ike at one point in this playthrough while I was off screen. And he's just going to die next turn, which means that this chapter is going to be over. But continuing with my thought real quick before I said that, the Miyu Mini Plus is capable of playing online. And when I found that out, I was like, well, what's the point of that? Well, there's a lot of points of that, because you can actually play against enemies or people. You can play with people competitively and whatever on 2-player, 3-player, 4-player games on any of your emulation games like the SNES or whatever. What's cool about it is that I found out about something really awesome, which is retro achievements. A lot of people don't necessarily know about this and aren't going to know about this because it's not something that is like, it's not mainstream, right? You're not going into AAA titles in the modern day and saying, I want this, 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 and this out of my gaming experience. It's just not happening. So because I'm defeating the Black Knight this turn, I might as well get all the experience I possibly can out of all the units I possibly can. Well, I found out there are achievements for even Thracia and Genealogy, which actually shocked me a lot, considering that they do not have an English localization. What's cool is that they use the correct names, like Rakusus and, oh my, I just love that they use the correct names. It's such a problem with me that I have with these newer translations and stuff like that. I even have a problem a little bit with Little Manster, Little Manster, because that translation mistranslates several of the names, like Lithus and Pern, who should be Pan. And there's a couple other names I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm just not. There's a lot of people who don't care and say that, you know, they want the old school names, because those are the old school translations. We're talking about Shia Patch. We're talking about other patches that are just not so great. But that aside, so retro achievements is basically, it allows you to have achievements implanted in games that never had them before. Like, for instance, beating a chapter in Thracia under so many turns, or getting the S rank or triple S rank, or recruiting this unit, that unit, so on and so forth. As well as promoting these units and all kinds of really cool achievements. And when I found that out, I was like, man, this is making me want to play the game even more. And that's exactly what I did. I started playing Thracia so much on that handheld, but it wasn't until after I discovered Genealogy has achievements. I thought that Thracia wouldn't have them. So now I have to go back and I have to actually start playing Thracia again even more so I can get some of these achievements, like the triple S rank, which is abysmally hard. I actually have no strategy for that right now. I've got a strategy for beating that game and getting at least, at minimum, an A rank without full recruitment. I'm thinking about doing that as a potential Let's Play 2 at some point, or playthrough, I should say, because I'm not going through the story and something like that. So what I'm saying here, and what I think is important to note, and I think, well, actually, is there any way I can shove you such a way that I can use you again? Probably. So yeah, what I'm saying is that it's very important to look at like all the advantages of everything you have to offer in a game, and like these consoles, and that the Miyu Mini Plus, I could activate that as long as I have Wi-Fi. I can get achievements for my games, which, you know, it's unnecessary. It's not like it's needed content, but it is super cool. And it's kind of reignited a little bit of a fire in me to want to play more of these games on my free time in these things to check out the achievements. And some of the achievements are quite difficult. Like I said, for instance, the triple S rank in good old Thracia. A lot of people probably will scoff at that idea and say that that's not really all that hard. I mean, to some people maybe, but it is definitely not what I would call an easy task. And here goes LaVale. He is resolved now. And he is gone.
General Zelgius, I'd hoped to fight for you a while longer.
I bet you did hope to fight for him a while longer, but he's about to be defeated as well, so don't count your chickens. You'll be joining him. If I can sell that Wishblade, I would, but you can't sell anything in the end game. You also can't go to shops. That is something that is very needful to be understood. Alright. So, I mean, it's really cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. I highly recommend that if you have not ever heard of this, and if you do play emulated games, that you look into it, because they have achievements for pretty much every game you can think of. And I mean every game. It's awesome. It's something that I had never expected in coming into these retro games with those handhelds. Now, originally, I only had the Funky S and the Miu Mini. I didn't have the Plus. The Plus is the one that can go on Wi-Fi. So there's no retro achievements option for something like the original Miu Mini. And that's why I never knew that some of this stuff was a thing. Personally, I think it's fantastic in extreme degrees. You are going to be defeated by Shinon, the actual true leader of the Grail Mercenaries. Goodbye. I love the way the enemies look in the endgame of Radiant Dawn. Absolutely love their gold look. How everything is just amazing on these characters, on these enemies particularly. I don't really have anybody else who can move and get any experience points that's worth, you know, doing. What I will show off, and this is something you'll see definitely next chapter anyway, is that all of the Leguse Royals have their own themes. And yes, that's the reason why I went quiet for a moment there, so you could hear it. I don't necessarily want to blast the volume in your ears. All of them. There is a couple of interesting quirks. Now, these two are not considered royals, so they don't get anything. Nyla doesn't get anything either. Her theme is literally the same theme as the Dawn Brigade's theme. So if you're playing with her in the end game, you're going to hear the Dawn Brigade's theme that you heard in the first few chapters, which is kind of funny. It's like a little cute callback and nothing of real importance. But also Oliver. Oliver has his own theme, which is super hilarious. None of the Bjork Royals have their own themes. So Sanaki, Alencia, so on and so forth, they don't have themes. And then here goes the defeat of the good old Black Knight. I am so sorry that Ike got a crit on you, but I guess that's just payback, friend. And I get to see both of Ike's crits in 2 turns. That's awesome. Impressive. Most impressive.
You are stronger, much stronger than before.
I have you to thank for that. I grew stronger through our previous fight. To be honest, I was overjoyed when I heard that the Black Knight was still alive. That surprised me. I felt neither sadness nor hate, just joy. My hands were shaking with anticipation. I couldn't wait to fight my most formidable enemy again. Your swordsmanship was fearsome, fiercer and more powerful than any I've ever seen. After our duel 3 years ago, I trained hard, trying to remember all of your skills and techniques.
General Gawain was invincible at the time he trained me. To surpass him was my ultimate goal as a swordsman.
Was I as skillful as you remember my father in his prime years? Did you see his shadow in my sword?
I certainly did, Ike. Thanks to you, I was able to fight my master at the height of his glory days.
Black Knight Zelgius, you were my father's killer, and my last teacher.
I spent most of my life shrouded in darkness, but my life had meaning. Now I'm certain of it. Friend, I will wait for you in the afterlife.
Let's move on. We don't have much time left. The swords are calling to each other. The Holy Sword Alondite. It's the counterpart to your sword, Ragnell. I think it wants you to take it up. Alondite, the sword that took my father's life.
What happened here?
We have arrived too late.
General Gawain. General. Oh, thank the goddess, he's still alive. But, oh no. Oh, what has he done? Helena. Did he kill her?
It must have been the medallion. He touched it, and the chaos bound within sent him into a rage beyond reason.
Ike, wait for me! Ah! Father! Mother!
The General's children.
What's wrong with them? Are they asleep? Father! Mother!
They are very tired, child. Let's not disturb them.
We can't leave them sleeping here. It's cold out. We have to take them home. Ike, you have to help me. Ike?
I'll take them home. Will you show me the way?
Yeah, come with me.
May your final slumber be a peaceful one. It appears the medallion was too much for Lord Ashnod.
Hey!
No, child. You mustn't touch it.
We can't let it get lost. I'll keep it.
You are unchanged.
You said you'd take my mother home, too.
Yes, of course.
Ike, what's wrong? Why are you just standing there? Are you hurt?
You saw everything, didn't you? Poor child.
Ike?
What happened?
Give me a moment. Sweet children, sleep now. Rest.
What did you do to him?
Merely helped him to forget. I could not leave this memory to haunt him. It is too heavy a burden for one so young.
What will you do with the medallion?
The girl seems safe from its influence. We will leave it with her for the time being.
That, my friends, is one of the major examples of why the voice acting in these games is not so good, and why I'm not a fan of necessarily putting voice acting or cutscenes or anything like that of serious note with like CGI or for instance like the other cutscenes, like when Ike is running around, is anybody there? Like he was screaming like a man. Somebody forgot to tell the voice actor for Ike that he had to play his child self, not his adult self. And it's so embarrassing. I would be literally embarrassed if I made that wrong decision there. One of the reasons why I have necessarily at this point steered clear from playing the Pokemon games that are on handhelds is because even though they're going to be on much bigger screens, I'm going to be blowing them up and putting them through my laptop and my TV, which is a very big screen. I'm legally blind, so I'm going to have a trouble seeing characters. I was halfway thinking about just using my normal voice for everybody in that game, because I'm not going to be able to immediately see, just from small sprites before the battles begin, whether or not, in some cases, the character is a boy or a girl. And I absolutely do not like making that distinction wrong. And once I see the correct distinction, then I would correct it, but it would just sound kind of weird. I've made such issues with, like, for instance, when a character was off screen in these games and still speaking, and I said the lines of that person, and it turned out to not be the person I was thinking. That kind of stuff in my mind is embarrassing. So I can only imagine if I was the voice actor for Ike in this game, and yeah. And then you noticed in that cutscene that there were lines that were skipped, like for instance when Sephiroth said tragic, and that was just totally glossed over. He didn't say it. It wasn't spoken. It disappeared instantly. And I almost want to say that it's just more localization errors. And then you saw, like, for instance, I didn't press that button to speed through Ike's line. And when he just now said, what was that, a dream or something like that? Very strange. These games they're great for what they are, but they are definitely a bit unpolished, if you want my humble opinion. You saw it too, didn't you, Ike? That memory, could that have been? I was there, in that place. My mother, she tried to stop my father, and he killed her. I saw it all. Is that what happened? I was contained inside at that time. I had no idea. Zelgius. Very interesting that this game tries to paint Zelgius, or the Black Knight, as not really an evil character. Like, he's gray. But the problem is he still killed Grail. He did not need to kill Grail in order to prove his superiority in swordsmanship over Grail. That's not necessarily how you prove that in all cases, because you can just get lucky. Let alone the fact that they had, an exchange of 3 or 4 blows at the time in Path of Radiance. That's not exactly a serious contest. If I were him, with how much I quote-unquote idolized Gawain and his swordsmanship and so on and so forth, I would have definitely found it very suspicious that a battle was over that quick. It was almost like Grail wanted to die. Like, he was done. He was done living. He killed his own wife, and his children were now grown enough that they could take care of each other and themselves, and Titania could take over, this, that, and the other. I really think that Grail was resigning himself to his death and wanted to die.
Can you still fight?
Yes, I will keep fighting. I won't stop until I die.
What's happening? What?
You bear the mark. So that's your secret, is it? The blood of the Laguz runs through your veins.
Yes. There was someone on my father's side who was with a Laguz. My lord, the brand. Do you know of a way to remove it? This cursed thing, I'm an outcast from my family. I joined the military to escape the shame and hatred in their eyes. I live in fear of discovery. When I think that I might see that same shame and hatred in another's eyes, I come close to despair. I have lived my life alone, unable to trust or become close to anyone.
Such loneliness and isolation, you poor child. It pains me to tell you that I know of no way to remove your brand.
I understand. It was a foolish question. I apologize. Lord Sage, I realized some years ago that I was aging more slowly than others do.
And you wish to conceal that fact, don't you? Is that why you rarely remove your armor, even when indoors?
Yes, but this ruse will not last indefinitely. In a few years, I will be forced to leave this army service.
And once again, you will be alone.
I am accustomed to being alone. My only hesitation is that I will miss studying the sword under my commander, General Gawain.
When the time comes for you to leave, will you come to me, perhaps?
My lord?
We share a similar condition. I see something familiar within you. I can understand your pain and isolation.
But why me?
I have a task that I must accomplish. With you at my side, I would feel more confident of my success.
If I join you, will I be redeemed?
I cannot say. At the very least, however, you will no longer be alone. And neither will I.
That is enough, then. You have made my decision simple. When I leave here, I will find you. I am a soldier in the Dayan army. I serve under the command of General Gawain. My name is Zelgius. May I ask your name, my Lord Sage?
My name? Of course.
Whose memory was that? It's just one of many. They're swirling everywhere. The tower resonates with their strength. But who is it? Who do they belong to? There is such sadness. Zelgius met someone, one lonely soul calling out to another. But he's no longer with us. Zelgius is gone. And now the soul that remains is once more alone.
You got the Alondite, and a little bit of bonus experience points. I appreciate that. Moving on to Endgame Rebirth 3.
How dull. I don't sense any enemies nearby. I know. Would you all like me to tell you a story as we climb?
What kind of story?
One from long ago, long before the grandparents of anyone here were born. In the very beginning of this world, there was only water, until one day a girl appeared. The girl was very clever, and she forged the first land. Then she made trees and flowers, and then she created beings.
The story of the grand creation. Heard it. Wake me up when it's over. Yeah, I kind of share your point there, Tibarn, because like it's just nonsensical. You mean to tell me that out of nowhere she came from like nothing? Oh my gosh, it's like people who will tell me the Big Bang is real, and that's what I believe. It takes more faith to believe in the Big Bang than it takes to believe in God. I'm just gonna throw it out there. You mean to tell me that everything was created from nothing, and that a random explosion of chaos created order? I'm sorry, that's not how that works. If it was how that works, I would just throw a grenade into my room every time it got dirty and clean it. The girl was you, right, Yune? Or are you talking about Ashira?
Both, really, and neither, actually. At first, the girl was excited by her new world, and she thought of little else. Then she started feeling lonely. Every being she created was different from her, not a single person that could truly understand her. All alone, she grew sadder and sadder, crying for thousands of years. Then some creatures began to grow and change, becoming more clever and sophisticated. They tried to comfort the girl and eventually grew closer to her. That was the birth of the Zunanma. They were your ancestors, Bjork, Legus, everyone. In Begnion, we are taught that the Zunanma were human. Bjork ancestors.
I'm sure there was some selfish reason why the senators would teach that. Probably helps justify Legus slaves. Interesting thought. Bjork were slaves first, especially given in the storyline. I like how they show that the so-called bigotry and prejudice in these particular games in Tellius aren't just one-sided, because to be real with you, it's never really just one-sided. There's always somebody doing wrong here and somebody doing wrong there. It happens everywhere. And that's why people need to come to that realization sooner than later, because it's just wasting time otherwise. With that being said, I want to thank you for joining me, as this was episode 68. If you like my content, please upvote and follow, or like and subscribe, and while you're at it, have a great and glorious day gaming.